And welcome once again to the top of the hour, folks. I'm Mark Johnston, your host here for VID5 Conference in our conference series brought to you by our friends at Laurentian Bank Securities. Off the top of this session, I do want to acknowledge that we had a technical glitch. The platform that we carry VID Conference with completely across the board through the US lost stability on our big marker platform. So it seemed to have been across the board. But rest assured, the panel that the panel that Barry Allen has hosted from Laurentian Bank Securities has been recorded on our Zoom platform and will be posted to our YouTube channel under VID TV. So no loss there. You'll be able to see industry perspective on development, exploration, and investing in Quebec hosted by Barry Allen on our YouTube channel shortly. In the meantime, we're picking the ball up with great excitement because we have our very close friend, Tony Williams, who is chairman and CEO of Major Precious Metals. Tony, thank you for joining us again.
Hi, how are you?
Very
good.
Everyone. Thank you. Aside from a technical hiccup, we're glad to be back on the train and to have your presence to lead us off the charge into the afternoon. So as always, Tony, I'm going to step to the side, let you handle your presentation, and I'll be back on the end of the presentation with some fantastic questions and answers.
Okay.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay, well, thanks, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Tony Williams. I'm the chairman and CEO of Major Precious Metals. And I'd like to introduce you, or to reintroduce you, some of you who have already listened to the presentation in the past, to our Skaergaard Project in Greenland, which after a decade of being effectively dormant and overlooked as a development project, is re-emerging as a palladium and gold deposit of global significance, we think, and also as a new world-class green metal source, which I hope we'll talk about in a few moments. Oh then, my presentation is not advancing. Okay, there we go. Okay, it's a bit slow there. Okay, I'll just give you some background and then we'll go on to the current events. The project is located in the central portion on the east coast of Greenland, about 450 kilometers west of Iceland and about 1,000 kilometers east of Nuuk, which is the capital of Iceland. The deposit, the intrusion, was first discovered in 1930. And this Skaergaard intrusion is a classic example of what we call a layered mafic igneous complex, very similar to the Bushveld complex in South Africa. Now, due to the retreat of the coastal ice over the last couple of decades, there's nearly 100% surface exposure over an area of some 70 square kilometers. The precious metal mineralization, which I'll be talking about, was only identified in the late 1980s. And since then, in the 20-year period from, say, 1990 to 2010, several drilling campaigns confirmed a 45-meter strata-bound mineralized zone containing platinum group elements, gold, and iron titanium mineralization. But up until 2010, it was viewed as a gold project only. Slides are a bit slow moving forward here today. Within this 45-meter overall mineralized horizon, there are specific layers between 1 and 3 meters in thickness, mainly rich in palladium and gold. And these can now be traced in outcrop as well as underground across 2/3 of the area of the intrusion. Within the zone, intermediate iron titanium oxide mineralization, which contains other secondary elements such as vanadium and gallium, is interspersed between the precious metal horizons. Major Precious Metals acquired the Skaergaard project about a year ago in November 2020, and we proceeded with an independent resampling of the extensive historical exploration, which totaled some 35,000 meters, which was carried out in this period from discovery of the mineralization in the late 1980s to 2010. So we resampled this extensive mineralization and subsequently remodeled the deposit using modern geological software and we updated the photo topography. As I say, because of the retreat of the ice, we have a lot more exposure than we had in days gone by. Okay, this resulted in a revised mineral resource estimate, which has been supported by a 120-page Canadian National Instrument 43101 report, which was filed in May 2021. And this confirmed, as you can see from this slide, that Skaergaard was indeed a project of global significance, containing a large resource of palladium, platinum, and gold, with the potential for these other recoverable critical metals, which I mentioned earlier. Looking at the slide, as I've said before, it's really important to frame the sheer magnitude of this opportunity at Skaergaard. As the slide shows, we already have some 4 million ounces of palladium and 1 million ounces of gold outlined as indicated resources, and close to a further 10 million ounces of palladium and 4 million ounces of gold in the inferred resource category, all independently assessed and modelled at fairly conservative precious metal prices, and supported by this 43101 report, which is filed on CEDAR and will also be shortly available on the company website. Now, this equates to an overall resource of close to 20 million palladium equivalent ounces, largely of palladium and gold. It's a unique precious metal assemblage, very rich in palladium, very rich in gold, quite low in platinum, and with other elements such as copper in the deposit, but quite low. So it's a very palladium, very gold rich resource of some traditional large significance. It is one of the largest deposits outside the traditional PGE producing areas of Russia and South Africa, and known mineralization is open in all directions, which we have tested this summer, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And it's located in a safe, mining-friendly jurisdiction, and I'll talk a little bit also about Greenland. I said a lot of this background information when we last spoke with on the VID conference in the summer, and since then we undertook a very extensive 2021 drilling program. We announced this a few weeks ago, and since filing that 43101 report, as you can see from this slide, we completed over 8,000 new meters of drilling in 32 new holes with additional channel sampling, with a total of just shy of 8,500 meters of total sampling, giving us over 11,000 new core and channel samples, which will now be assayed for palladium, platinum, gold, and other secondary elements. Now, the aim of this program was manifold. We want to uplift and expand existing resources, but also to further verify the historical exploration and the potential for mining of vanadium, titanium, and these other secondary elements as well. Now, this is important because if we can demonstrate that areas of this deposit have this coherent mineralization in not only the precious metal horizons, but also these other secondary elements, then in our mining studies, we can look at bulk tonnage mining underground, and we're also looking, as you can see on the slide, at the open pit potential in the northern part of Skaergaard, where lateral erosion has exposed the mineralization at surface. That's been poorly drill tested up to now. And again, we were able to test in detail one of these potential areas, and the results, we'll see what happens when the results start to come through. These 11,000 new samples, they're currently en route and a secure chain of custody to the ALS Global Laboratory in Ireland for assay. The results will be announced once the lab confirms the exact timing, but now I think we're looking at early 2022. So after the holiday season ends and we battle through all the COVID protocols in Greenland, Iceland, Denmark, and then into Ireland, It'll probably be mid-end January before the results start to emerge. For all these details and more, I would refer investors to the company website at www.majorprecious.com and to the 43-101 report, which gives full background as to the history of the deposit and all the licensing requirements in Greenland. And the website, as well as documenting our progress at Skaergaard, also gives details of our management team. Those of you that know me and know the team I put together know that we have a lot of experience in successfully taking projects along the mine development cycle in a number of challenging jurisdictions worldwide. And it's quite refreshing to be in Greenland with a modern mining act, which sets out very clearly the route you have to take to go from exploration to exploitation licenses. Now, Skaergaard is indeed a remote location with rugged terrain, but is actually, in mining terms and exploration terms, quite accessible. There's a 600-meter field airstrip next to the deposit, about 10 kilometers away. But most of the 2021 program was conducted using as a base the ship that you see. And the reason I put this slide up is you can see the ship anchored in the field right next to the deposit. This was used as a base for the geologists, for the helicopter pilots, for the surveyors, etc. And it was a great success. It was an environmentally friendly way to conduct the program. It was a great success. We did, of course, use the airstrip and the exploration camp to a certain extent, as we will next season, but we will certainly use the ship again because it was a very successful way to access exploration of the deposit. As people who know Greenland know that most of the exploration in Greenland is being conducted on coastal projects, and for most of Greenland's coastal exploration, there's a 4 to 5 month summer window. But for any mining, it would be year-round, no different from any other mining in cold, remote locations, which I've had a lot of experience of in Kazakhstan and the Russian Far East, on a FIFO basis, a fly-in, fly-out basis. We used four diamond drilling rigs this season, which have stayed on site. We've reached agreement with the licensing authorities and with the drilling company that these rigs have been winterized and have remained on site, which will allow a more rapid mobilization in 2022. The drilling successfully located all the mineralized horizons, and obviously we await assays, and as I've said, we have more than 11,000 samples on their way for testing. Just some more pictures of the drill rigs, some of the core. As I say, we intersected the mineralized horizons, so structurally we're already remodeling the deposit with SLR, with our independent consultants. But of course, the key thing that everyone is waiting for is the assay results of the 2021 program, because not only will this underpin all the work we've done on the historical sampling, also it gives us 2021 data for analysis. These are the samples. They're now in a container on their way to Denmark and then on to Ireland. They should arrive in Ireland anytime in the next 4 or 5 days. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about Greenland. Greenland, generally speaking, is underexplored and mineral rich, and its mineral sector is gaining a great interest in geopolitical importance for the critical minerals needed for the so-called fourth industrial revolution that's ongoing. Both US and European agencies, such as the Exim Bank and the European Raw Materials Alliance, are already advancing debt funding on fairly favorable terms for feasibility stage projects. Now this is a very helpful stepping stone on the mine development cycle for all Greenland developers, and including ourselves. And we hope to take advantage of this as we progress our project into more detailed feasibility work over the next 12 to 18 months. The new Greenland government has reaffirmed its support for sustainable mining projects, only excluding uranium mining. And several projects are in production and advancing along the development cycle. The Fraser Institute annual survey of mining companies, which was published recently, ranked Greenland number 2 in Europe after Finland and above places like Mexico and Norway and the Northwest Territories for investment friendliness. We'll hear a lot more about Greenland over the next decade. Maybe an unfortunate aspect of global warming is that the coastal ice is retreating. It is exposing favorable, attractive geology for exploration. And as I say, Skaergaard, we've just completed our first detailed drilling and evaluation program after over a decade of the project being dormant, and there'll be a lot more to come. I'd just like to talk a little bit about palladium, which is a not very well understood market compared to its other precious metal compatriots such as gold and silver. Palladium is a relatively niche market of around 10 million ounces a year. Approximately 7 million ounces a year of primary production, largely from South Africa and Russia, with some contributions from North America, largely from the Stillwater complex and from Zimbabwe. Supply is relatively inelastic to demand and technological trends, as 90% of mined palladium is a byproduct of other metals, mainly nickel in Russia and platinum in South Africa. Now, demand for palladium is still driven by the increasing metal requirements in vehicle catalytic converters, and this is ongoing and increasing as tighter pollution standards increase worldwide. Now, of course, there will be some inevitable EV penetration over the next decade or so, and depending on which graph you want to look at, this can be faster or slower, depending on your view. But I would contend that hybridization remains a cornerstone of all this energy transition as this decarbonization of the global economy gathers pace. And I can assure you that hybrids use a lot of palladium. Therefore, we believe we cannot emphasize enough the ongoing importance of palladium in this decarbonization push to address climate change. Palladium is used to remove these highly toxic nitrogen oxides from vehicle exhausts. And these NOxs, as they're called, are 300 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. And therefore, these tighter emission standards worldwide will underpin palladium demand for years to come, EV penetration notwithstanding. In the short term, sorry, I'd like to go back to the previous slide if somebody else is quoting that. In the short term, the semiconductor chip shortage, which has gained a lot of publicity over recent months, has introduced a whole host of supply disruptions to vehicle production in 2021, and this will be ongoing into 2022. And this has led to a reduction of some 1 million ounces in palladium demand over the last 6 to 9 months, and a sharp contraction in prices from the highs of close to $3,000 an ounce earlier in the year, which actually were event-driven largely because of the problems at Norilsk with the flooding in certain mines and some ecological problems and power outages in South Africa, as well as other systemic problems, which again are ongoing in South Africa. Prices seem to have stabilized now, just above $1,800 an ounce currently. And look, while there is no quick fix to this catalytic converter and semiconductor chip shortage, there certainly is pent-up demand in the vehicle sector, and we believe we'll see palladium prices regain their upward momentum next year. Palladium, in our opinion, is still right at the forefront as a green energy metal, and the potential for Greenland to become a major source is of the utmost importance because of its relative geopolitical stability. If we go to the next slide, if somebody else is... We already have a strong focus on all ESG aspects as we start the relaunch of Skaergaard along the mine development cycle. We're working with our independent consultants, SLR, who have a very strong and in-depth ESG function towards adopting the Canadian government towards sustainable mining, TSM protocols, which many countries worldwide are adopting as the new benchmark for ESG initiatives, even exceeding the World Bank Equator Principles. We aim to minimize the impact on ecosystems and biodiversity, which is particularly important in Greenland, and look carefully at lowering the carbon footprint of any operation with initiatives such as renewable energy, battery storage, and electric microgrids, as already demonstrated in some remote Canadian Indigenous communities. And as I said, there's a very modern Mining Act in Greenland. It sets out very clearly the steps that have to be achieved, not only in technical feasibility, but also with ESG strategy very much to the forefront. And again, we're very fortunate, I think, in working with SLR, who are very up to speed on this sort of aspect. This is where the company sits right now. Our main listing is on the NEO Exchange in Canada, where we graduated from the Canadian Stock Exchange towards the end of September this year. And results permitting, we will investigate a London listing next year, as well as a full OTC listing in the US. Our market capitalization today is circa 50 million Canadian dollars, and we have some very significant upcoming milestones, which I think will in effect, as well as relaunching the Skaergaard Project, will relaunch the company as we move to more senior exchanges over the course of the next 12 months or so. As I say, we have some very significant upcoming milestones. The results from this summer's program and the drilling and sampling will form the basis for an updated mineral resource estimate, which we're still confident we can produce by the end of Q1 next year. And then the parallel studies with mining and metallurgy will form the basis for a PEA, a preliminary economic analysis, before the first half of next year is over. This PEA will very clearly determine the full potential for the economic extraction of the substantial resources at Skaergaard, and it will set out the next steps needed. We anticipate that a further 10,000 meter drilling campaign will be needed to go into detailed feasibility studies and then on to construction permitting. But as I've said, our management team is very experienced in this portion of the mine development cycle. And again, results allowing us, if the drilling results and the assay results meet our expectations, we feel confident that the updated MRE and then the PEA will demonstrate the potential that we have at Skaergaard and the size of the opportunity that remains there. As I mentioned earlier, our 4 diamond drill rigs remain on site for rapid deployment in more detailed feasibility work next year once we analyze these results. Regarding a potential re-rating for major precious metals, as I've said many times, it all starts and ends in the market. This slide is several months old now, but as the slide illustrates, really comparing mostly to South African and some other North American assets. Skaergaard certainly, as the analyst concludes, is one of the largest PGM projects in the world and is currently trading at a fraction of the peer group market cap value. And that was based on the work that was filed in May last year, and obviously doesn't incorporate any of the results that we've had from this year's summer program. So we obviously think we're well placed to add some significant value as we add Skaergaard, as we progress Skaergaard along the mine development cycle. And it's at a time where, despite volatility in precious metal prices, the metal price package for the precious metals we have at Skaergaard are robust. We see strong demand for palladium in the coming decade, despite EV penetration. And we're not in Russia. We're not in South Africa. We own 100% of the resource. Mineralization is open in all directions, and as well as the PGMs, we have a lot of gold, and we have the potential for these other critical metals. And just before we leave this slide, we will be producing some other comparables as we revamp our website and we get the results from the Skaergaard drilling of this year. But just to mention two other relevant recent comparables, which are not illustrated on the slide, but I'm sure that the audience are aware of them if they follow the sector and can look them up anyway. There's a project in Western Australia owned by a company called Chalice Mining. It's called the Jalima Project. And there's another palladium project owned by Eurasia PLC, a London-listed company in the Kola Peninsula of the Russian Arctic region. Now Jalima has recently announced a palladium equivalent resource of around 17 million palladium ounces in indicated and inferred resources, of which about 10 million palladium equivalent ounces are in what we call the 3E category. 3E is a terminology used to summarize palladium, platinum, and gold resources. Jalima is certainly a world-class discovery, and it's got plenty of upside because, as I say later in the presentation, it's not unusual for these large layered intrusions to host many separate deposits. The market valuation of Chalice is around Australian dollars 3.5 billion today, based on lots of upside. It's a world-class discovery. Its logistics are less challenging than Skaergaard, I will admit that, but 3.5 billion is the market value that the market is putting on Skaergaard, on Jalima, compared to 50 million today for Skaergaard. And then just briefly regarding Eurasia, their current market capitalization of around 650 million Great British pounds, which for those of you that can do the math is around $1 billion Canadian today. That's based on a 15 million ounce palladium rich resource in the Russian Arctic and future potential on a joint venture with the Russian state company. And again, a good project, lots of upside, but the market is already putting a value there. It's yet to apply that value to Skaergaard. So therefore, to me, it's pretty obvious we have plenty of upside for re-rating once the market digests the results of the 2021 program. And of course, we put the next steps into some sort of perspective with our PEA. Have the next slide. Okay, this is really the last slide, apart from the appendix, which I won't really talk about much today. But we believe the investment proposition speaks for itself. It's a pretty unique opportunity. In terms of value, just based on the May 2021 43-101 filing, it's around $5. It's well less than $5 an ounce in the ground of contained precious metal value, and it's a unique precious metal assemblage, rich in palladium, rich in gold. There is a base of very significant historical exploration, which has well established this 45-meter mineralized zone with its layered precious metal horizons, which can be traced right across this very large deposit, which is now almost fully exposed. You can see there's still some of the glacier left, and we've drilled on the glacier, but there is very significant historical exploration, and this summer's results, if positive, will only underpin the significance of that historical work. And as I've said, we have 11,000 new samples to assay in the coming months. We own 100% of this palladium-rich resource with lots of gold too, and the deposit contains other potentially recoverable critical metals. Mineralization is open in all directions, and it's in Greenland, a safe, mining-friendly jurisdiction, not in Russia, not in South Africa. And really, just to put it into some sort of perspective, I would just like to say again that it's not unusual for these large layered intrusions to contain multiple deposits. Since the Bushveld was discovered in 1924, over 30 separate mines have been developed on that Bushveld complex in South Africa. And on the new discovery in Western Australia at Jalima, they already have identified a trend of 26 kilometers with lots of potential for additional discoveries. Now look, at Skaergaard, we're just relaunching along the mine development cycle. We've only owned the project for 1 year. The first 6 months were spent resampling, reanalyzing, remodeling the deposit. That resulted in the filing of the 43-101 report in May last year. We then went straight into a detailed drilling program, sampling program, battling all the COVID restrictions, etc., and managed to drill over 8,000 meters, collect over 11,000 samples, which are now on their way for assay to Ireland. They'll be independently assayed. We'll have a lot of news flow come the first quarter of next year, through the first quarter into the next exploration season. We hope that the market, when digesting these results, as we present them to the market, will re-rate the company. All we can do is to say, look, we have one of the largest palladium and gold-rich deposits in the world. I would expect us to be re-rated on upcoming mining studies, on expanding the resource, in underpinning what we have there already. But as I say, it all starts and ends in the market. I think it's a unique opportunity for the company right now. It is the right place. We have the right team and the right plan. And it's the right time for Skaergaard and major precious metals to be brought back into focus. So thank you for listening. I'm happy to take any questions you might have. And thank you to the VID people for hosting us here today. So thanks a lot.
Much appreciated, Tony. Certainly a well-rounded tour through the company and where things are for major precious metals. I'll start off just noting again, you had a visit to Greenland sort of late summer, fall. If you were to take the top 3 lessons or learnings that came out of that particular visit, what would that be?
Well, hopefully we won't have to prepare for COVID next year. So I mean, I think the number one thing is that what I say to, and I say it to my kids, the 5 Ps: perfect preparation prevents poor performance. So the more you plan, particularly when we have this exploration window, so the detailed planning that we did served us in good stead. I think we underestimated a little bit the effect that the COVID, battling through the quite correct COVID protocols would have. But you know, I think we learned that it is accessible. We learned that using a boat to supplement the exploration camp was the way to go. We learned the fact that mobilizing the drill rigs was an onerous task. Hence our negotiations with the drilling company and with the authorities to keep the rigs on site.
Yes.
And you know, we learned that we'll do better next year.
Very good, Tony. Thank you for that perspective. Quite a list of questions coming through from our audience around the world. So I'm going to launch in here. First question comes from our friend Harold in Germany, I believe. Did you find any uranium during a recent drilling campaign, Tony?
No uranium whatsoever associated with Skaergaard. It's as I say, and I know this is a hot topic because the Greenland government is not prepared to sanction uranium mining. Skaergaard is a layered intrusion, in similar in concept to the Bushveld complex, and similar in many ways to the mineral assemblage there. That other than we have quite a unique precious metal assemblage in that it's palladium and gold rich, and it's nickel poor, and it's copper poor. So no uranium, lots of palladium, lots of gold, but could be other critical metals such as vanadium and titanium. And the assays will tell us more over the next several months. Okay,
thank you for that, Tony. Next question comes up. Does your project have an advantage regarding where it's located on the east coast of Greenland?
Yes, in some ways, yes. It's a 2.5-hour flight from Western Iceland. So we already have a 600-meter field airstrip established on site. Maintenance is taken care of by the Greenland government, and we're very grateful for that. We fly a Twin Otter in. It's about a 2.5-hour, 2-hour, 20-minute flight from Western Iceland. Wow. So in that sense, yes. Also in the sense that where the location is, it's on the coast, but as are all other Greenland projects too, really, as we speak, or most of them anyway right now. So we have water access when the fjords are ice free, which is 4 to 5 months of the year.
Mhm.
And I think one of the reasons, although we showed a lot of water, one of the reasons I showed that slide to show the boat in the fjord a few hundred meters away from the deposit. And that was a very effective way. So look, it's rugged terrain. It's remote in that sense. The nearest settlements going north and south are both 300 kilometers north, 300 kilometers south. But in mining terms, in exploration terms, it's relatively accessible. You can fly in and you can boat in.
Yes, fair enough. And I remember from previous sessions, Tony, you've drawn the parallel between either Northern Ontario, Northern BC, many parts of Canada that are being mined, not that far off from the realities of what you're finding in Greenland. So I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
Great. Question about permitting. How difficult will permitting be given the jurisdiction?
Well, again, a good question. And a question I've been asked lots by investors over the last couple of months. All I say is it's relatively straightforward in that there's a Modern Mining Act. And in our 43-101 report, we've set out, we were at great pains because I know this is it's a question for any mining project anywhere in the world, but perhaps so as Greenland's a new boy on the block. And because of the uranium mining aspects, people are asking that provided you do what you're supposed to do, and the Mining Act sets out what you're supposed to do, permitting will be relatively straightforward, provided, again, I'm repeating myself, but provided you do what you're supposed to do. We did what we were supposed to do. We got our permits for this year. We'll get our permits for next year. It's very clear what you have to do in terms of the feasibility work and the ESG aspects of impact statements that you have to incorporate into your feasibility work before you're granted before you can go from an exploration license to an exploitation license. But I think that's a good thing, and I think I think the Greenland government's to be congratulated on their approach. They're very step-by-step approach that's needed for all projects worldwide. And as I say, we've embedded ESG into our program from day one, working with our consultants SLR to make sure that we're right at the cutting edge of towards sustainable mining, which is, as I say, the Canadian government really the template now yes. Almost I would say a worldwide template.
Good to hear. Thank you for that. Question here for you, Tony. Why is there a disconnect, in your opinion, with the independently verified large precious metal resource and the relatively low market cap?
Well, I'd like to think it's just a matter of timing. As I said, we spent the first 6 months of post-acquisition in I won't repeat what I said. I'll summarize in resampling, remodeling, filed a 43-101 report. When we last spoke in the summer, we were just about to start the drilling program. Yes. We started the drilling program. We have a successful drilling program. We overcame, challenges, of COVID and also working in Greenland for the first time in over 12 years. And we produced results. News flow can only happen when there's news. I mean, we've tried to keep our investors abreast of the fact that we're drilling, we're sampling. We've now demobilized. We're now leaving site with the assays. The stuff's on its way under secure chain of custody to Ireland. But the assays will tell us. So I think that the market is waiting. We've said all we can probably say about the context, the opportunity, the scale, etc. I think if the results start to flow through in January, February next year into the revised mineral resource estimate, and then of course to a PEA, that will put us front and center. And I'd like to think we're certainly comparable in size of resource to the new discoveries in Western Australia and in Russia with Eurasia and with Chalice. I think Jalima has less logistical issues than we do at Skaergaard, but we're no different from the challenges that Russian Arctic poses. The big challenges we have are seasonal exploration. So I think the market is always hungry for news flow. But yes. I think that with the results coming in the first quarter, this disconnect will start to change. And I think with coming to conferences like being hosted by VID today in a prestigious conference, we tell the story. We have to tell the story. Up to now, I think that the story is sort of known, but it isn't widely known. And then again, another thing I think that's happened in the last six months is that we have had some weakness in the palladium price from the sort of runaways that we had in the first half of the year. I mean, because of what happened at Norilsk and some issues in South Africa, we saw the palladium price roar away to the upper 2000s and peaking at just over $3,000 an ounce in May. Then the reality set in that the semiconductor chip shortage was beginning to bite. Yes. And that palladium demand, although the palladium market had been in deficit for most of the last decade, there was going to be a fall off in palladium demand because inventories were down, and I think the stats are about 1 million ounces has fallen away from palladium demand in the last 6 months. So as markets like instant gratification, that has segued into sort of people with palladium exploration stocks maybe having to bear a bit of the brunt of that. But I think anyone who wants to take a deeper dive here, look at the scale of the opportunity, look at the comparables that we have to mines elsewhere in the world, to exploration projects elsewhere in the world, surely can see that Greenland in itself will become much more geopolitically important, and Skaergaard, with all its advantages of scale and size and location, will become a big part of that over the next decade. So I'm hopeful that over the next 6 months, we can start to bridge that gap of this disconnect, which is a fair question. There is a disconnect with the relatively low market cap of the company vis-a-vis the potential that we see at Skaergaard.
Okay, Tony, thank you. That very fleshed out, and I appreciate that very much. What is the cash position going forward, Tony?
We raised just after we finished our presentation at the VID conference last summer. We raised $10 million in straight equity. That got us through the drilling season. We raised a further $6 million in 2 tranches in a convertible debenture at the end of September, October. That will take us through to PEA. At that point in time, we'll obviously evaluate where we are. In order to go to feasibility, we make no bones about it. It'll require, in conjunction with SLR, where we're talking about another 10,000 plus or minus meter drilling, testing, sampling program, metallurgical work, etc. And that's going to require funding. But right now we're okay through to producing a PEA, which will set out more clearly the actual detail of the next steps needed to demonstrate the full potential. So we've done 2 fundings in 2021, but the 2022 program, depending on the scale, size, and whatever, will require additional funding.
Fair enough. Thank you for that. Point of clarification from one of our viewers here. Ram is asking, did he read the timeline slide correctly that the MRE and PEA will be completed early next year?
I think we'll certainly look. I don't want to over promise and underperform. We were slightly delayed leaving site with the mobilization. We had to go through additional COVID protocols in Nuuk and en route to Denmark. So we're slightly delayed in getting the samples to the lab. We hope we would have been there by now and started to have results. The labs themselves are all under pressure. This is not making excuses, it's just telling the reality.
Sure.
We expect to start to get results mid-end January. We will certainly inform the market as soon as we get them, start to get them in a meaningful way. We're still pretty confident with SLR of having a revised mineral resource estimate by the end of Q1. The PEA, I think we'll have it during the second half of Q2. Again, we're very beholden on lab timing, so there's no point. No, we won't have the PEA finished by the end of Q1. No, certainly. We will have it sometime during Q2, but I hope we'll have enough results during Q1 to be able to plan the 2022 program. And there's no point in going into Greenland without proper planning. You have to plan it ahead. You have to really look at where are the areas that need most attention in terms of more metallurgy, more drilling, in order to go to much more detailed and then cost of construction work, which I think is the ultimate, that's what everyone wants to know. So certainly MRE, hopefully by the end of Q1, and a PEA during Q2. And okay. I hope that's okay. I'm sorry, I can't be any more time correct on that, because I don't want to overpromise and underperform.
I think that's very fair, Tony, and very honest. Thank you for that perspective there. Let's, as we wind down, perhaps time for one more question here. It's a great opportunity for us to dream into the next 5 years together, Tony. So what is your vision and your hope and your expectation of where the company will be over the next 5 years?
Well, I think I hope we will largely disconnect or reconnect the market cap to the potential. And I hope we've progressed significantly along the mine development cycle. In order to go into development, I think this concept right now would be a stage gate development. This is where looking at the open pit, starter pit potential might be quite important. The bulk of this deposit will be an underground mine. There's no doubt about that. But it would be fast track to be able to start a small initial open pit and then into a decline from there, either directly into the precious metal horizons, or maybe even, as I said, bulk mining the 45-meter well-established mineral section. In 5 years, in 2 years' time, I think we'll have established the economics of Skaergaard beyond question.
Okay.
Again, it all depends on precious metal prices during the whole course of this, as it does for every development project in the world. But once we've established the economic potential of the mineralization at Skaergaard, we can start to think about the scale of the operation, whether it's major precious metals on its own, or with a partner, or with a big brother. So until we really can put some good preliminary economics around this deposit, it's a hard question to say, other than I think we will be re-rated, and I'm hopeful it'll be a re-rating upwards.
Well, I can certainly say we're hopeful there right with you, Tony, and we support the dream. You always bring a very colorful and wise voice to the VID conference. So thank you for your nod as a prestigious conference. We reflect that back to you. You're one of the best guests we have each and every time we get together. I know the audience is very grateful for your insights. The questions reflect the curiosity and the interest in the company. And as always, we'll be watching closely as the company moves forward into Q1 of 2022. So Tony, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Tony Williams from Major Precious Metals. And at the top of the hour, folks, we have our next guest coming through. But before we do that, as we end this session, you will be redirected to the survey. We welcome your thoughts so we can do a better job next time. And then, of course, at the top of the hour, we have Nighthawk joining us as our next featured company. I look forward to seeing you at the top of the hour. Thanks again, Tony. All the best to you.
Thank you. Cheerio.